Good morning, kids, and welcome back to another video of Fox Flicks on Popcroft Studios. Today, we're going to check out one of his Multiverse Tell Speedpaint videos. It was this time about someone called Bio-Mech Kelly. Let's hop in and check it out.
I had two different ideas for what I wanted to do with this month's community redraw, where my subscribers had been submitting a whole bunch of mechs and robots and androids and things like that. I knew I wanted
Oh, that's an ad. We'll be right back. And we're back.
to turn those submissions into Bio-Mechs, like my original character Bio-Mech Kayla has, but I had two different story ideas, didn't know what to go with, so I just decided I'm gonna do both. Today's episode will be a sort of set of anthology stories of adventures Bio-Mech Kayla has gone on, and then on Monday's episode I'll do a few more redraws in a team-up story with Bio-Mech Kayla that will have a different format to the story and to the artwork. But you'll see that when we get there. For today, the adventures of Bio-Mech Kayla. Let's
Gonna check that one out.
hit like if you want.
Subscribe if you feel like it. By the way, enjoy the show.
It was strange for Michaela Maciel to think about just how much her life had changed in the last 4 years. The fact that she hadn't even had her biomechanical best buddy Charlie for a quarter of her life was baffling to her, as it felt like they'd been together forever. Charlie was a sentient mechanical organism called a Bio-Mech, with the ability to attach to living beings and transform parts of their body into cybernetic enhancements, like cannons, swords, rollerblades, what have you. His kind had been scattered across the multiverse just before Kayla and Charlie met, and since then the two of them had been going around to other dimensions, tracking down other Bio-Mechs that were causing problems in worlds they shouldn't be in.
Crazy looking.
Of course, the two of them had been on plenty of other adventures as well. They frequently helped out a team of multiverse-jumping heroes called the Sharp Gang to face threats such as Eloise Ludum, who kidnapped people and creatures from other dimensions to fight to the death in her combat arenas, and more recently, the Archon Demons, who were tearing the multiverse apart dimension by dimension. Kayla and her boyfriend, Tayron Janivar, were founding members of the Sharp Gang. He is from a universe that, from Kayla's perspective, is like something out of a fantasy movie. He and Kayla make plenty of time to spend with each other, and their relationship has just gotten better and better over the years. But they're also both very independent people. Tayron is the overseer of his world, so he has plenty of responsibilities protecting his people and the many creatures that make his world their home. So when Kayla isn't spending time with him, helping out the Sharp Gang, or spending time with her family in her home dimension, she's still out there tracking down Bio-Mechs. In the last few years, she and Charlie, on their own and with help from various Sharp Gang members, have captured 116 Bio-Mechs in 53 different dimensions.
116 over 53 dimensions. That's a lot of doubling up at least.
Though there are occasions where they don't feel the need to take the Bio-Mech they've found away. One of these adventures involved Kayla and Charlie tracking down a Bio-Mech in dimension W357. The Earth of this realm is stuck in a perpetual Wild West era, with the whole world influenced by elements of that time and place, which, in Kayla's world, lasted only a few decades in the late 1800s. Much of this world's technology was very primitive compared to Bio-Mechs, and was mostly all steam-powered. Because of this, when a bandit from the Boneyard Outlaws got his hands on one of these machines, he'd have the power to become a force unlike anything seen in this world, right in the heart of the American Wild West. Just prior to coming to find the Bio-Mech that had arrived in this world, Kayla and Charlie had gotten the help of their clever mech maker friend, good old Benny Sharp, to develop a way to track Bio-Mechs in other dimensions. Charlie absorbed this tech
good old Benny Sharp
into himself, and they used this very mission as a way to test it out, coming to W357. Here they eventually found their way right into a shootout at the still-in-development Boneyard Train Depot. A group calling themselves the Boneyard Outlaws had stolen firearms from the Bonderas family security team and were trying to shoot their way into the main office of Clandon Bonderas, the head of the railway project. His guards were perched on either side of a tall stairway, firing down on the outlaws trying to make their way up. Kayla quickly spotted the outlaw leader, a guy she later learned was named Scraper, with the Bio-Mech that they were after turning his fist into a hulking metal gauntlet. He was using it to guard himself as he headed up the stairs towards the office, gun held in his other hand, clearly itching to use it on the man inside. Scraper's gang was laying down suppressive fire as best they could, but Clandon's blockade of security soon got a shot in on Scraper's leg. Scraper fell to one knee with a snarl. The Bio-Mech on his arm suddenly took his gun out of his other hand and absorbed it, then shifted his finger into a revolver. He thrust it forward and plugged a hole right in the head of the man who'd grazed him. Kayla's inclination was usually to side with whoever was fighting against a Bio-Mech, Charlie was one of the few Bio-Mechs with a soul, and most others they came across had a pretty bad influence on whoever they attached to. But something felt different about this situation.
In this case, it's the opposite. The Bio-Mech is the one being corrupted.
She shifted Charlie into a megaphone and screamed out across the whole rail yard for everyone to stop firing. Knowing this would be a bizarre spectacle for these people, she then shifted Charlie into a cannon and used him to launch herself into the middle of the fight, landing in between both sides, demanding to know what was going on here. One of the outlaws whipped his gun towards her, and without even looking in his direction, she aimed Charlie's cannon and blasted the guy with a concussive blow that knocked him right onto his back.
Ow.
Anyone that hadn't taken notice of her
Well, he's
yet
alive.
did after that. One of the Banderas security people asked, "What the heck are you, some kind of space lady or something?" Kayla then giddily leaned into the Western standoff and said in her best Southern accent, "I'm Bio-Mech Kayla, and I reckon I'm here for that shifting piece of metal on your arm there, buckaroo," she said, pointing at Scraper. "But if you got a good reason for using it, maybe I could help you out before I take it away." The outlaw clearly didn't like the idea of someone taking his tech, but he quickly explained that he'd grown up working hard labor on the Boneyard Railroads for the cruel Banderas family. His parents had sold him off to the Banderases, who ran the region they were in. This place had little legal oversight, so the Banderas family basically made the laws. They had plenty of children under their employ that they'd purchased from families who couldn't afford the harsh taxes the Banderas family implemented. By the time Scraper was in his late teens, he had built a well-formed hatred for the Banderas family and had a crew of other disgruntled so-called employees who were ready to turn on their captors. Just as they were about to start their rebellion, like an aid from God, this Bio-Mech had found Scraper and attached to him, giving him and his crew an even bigger edge. Having heard the gunfire stop, Clandon Banderas had stepped out of his office and heard what Scraper had been saying. He tried to explain his side to Kayla, but it was pretty clear that he was trying to hand-wave away his family's actions and claimed that these outlaws were his property. That was all Kayla really needed to hear. It wasn't her place to kill this guy, and she'd never purposely killed anyone, but she figured whatever Scraper decided to do was his business. Being much more adept with a Bio-Mech, Kayla shifted Charlie into a blinder shield and got in front of Scraper. This kind of shield shone a blinding light in the direction Kayla was pointing it, so none of the security team could see what they were doing as they tried to start firing again. The rest of Scraper's team ran up behind Kayla, got up the stairs, and they all
This deck is pretty good so far.
apprehended or knocked out the security guards. Clandon had run back into his office, and when Kayla lowered her shield and marched inside with Scraper, she was nearly plugged full of holes herself. Clandon had just whipped the sheet off of a Gatling gun he kept in his office and started firing a barrage of bullets. Luckily, Scraper had seen it in time and leapt in front of Kayla. His Bio-Mech gauntlet had unfolded to make a wide metal shield to protect them both, but also to absorb all the bullets being shot into itself. Clandon fired until he'd run through his entire magazine, then had to stop, looking in horror at how he'd done no damage to his foes. In fact, he may have made them more powerful. Scraper's own Bio-Mech suddenly shifted into an arm-mounted Gatling gun itself, and he started firing all the bullets he'd just absorbed at the ground at the man's feet. Within seconds, there was a hole in the floor, and Clandon fell through, along with his gun. Kayla and Scraper looked down to see, on the floor below, Clandon's leg was pinned under his own weapon and some debris. Even though Kayla had made it her self-appointed mission to gather rogue Bio-Mechs, as I said, in some cases, it did actually make sense to leave a Bio-Mech with an ally it had made. Kayla spent a few days with the Boneyard Outlaws, helping them get into some more Banderas bases and freeing more kids they had doing hard labor. During that time, she got the sense that, while Scraper was a pretty trigger-happy guy, often looking for a fight, he did also have a good heart. She and Charlie agreed to let him keep his Bio-Mech, but said she'd be back to check in on him from time to time. So far, he's given her no reason to regret that decision, as the Boneyard Outlaws may be just that, outlaws, but ones that are only out to fight laws that put good people in real bad situations.
Getting some head. Oh, hold on. Now that we're back, I was trying to say, getting some real Red Dead Redemption vibe from this guy, or at least from his backstory. All he's missing is a horse.
Now you might be wondering, what exactly do Kayla and Charlie do with the Bio-Mechs that they capture? Originally, they were just bringing them back to an area of Kayla's world called the Bronze Zone, where Charlie and a few dozen other Bio-Mechs had first appeared in Kayla's world. But this tactic was ruined by a man that Kayla considered to be an absolute insufferable idiot by the name of Stannis Tromblat. See, Stannis currently ran a company called Ludmax that kept trying to capture Bio-Mechs from the Bronze Zone and turn them into weapons. The company had been started long before Kayla was born by a man named Louis Medul, but now Tromblat was somehow fumbling his way through keeping it afloat. On many, many occasions, he had forced his scientists to run different experiments on Bio-Mechs that often made them powerful enough to blow up his labs and escape, just for Kayla to have to then recapture them and put them back in the Bronze Zone. You see, Stannis firmly believed that he was the single luckiest person on the planet. He had 8 times in his 32 years of life been in situations that should have killed him, being struck by lightning, hit by a truck, drowned, and being revived, and more.
I see.
He'd also won the lottery twice and essentially gotten the job that he had as the head of Ludmax because Louis Medul had liked his moxie after meeting at a casino where he won betting it all on black 4 times in a row. He genuinely believed nothing bad could happen to him.
Oh, this is gonna look good.
In a sense, it almost never did, but that didn't mean his staff and those around him were immune as well. The closest Stannis had ever come to succeeding in weaponizing Bio-Mechs was for a military contract that he called Project Titanoid. He'd claimed to the US military that he had a working prototype of a super soldier enhanced with a Bio-Mech, but just showed the military security footage of Bio-Mech Kayla in action as if she worked for him. He said they were just working on upgrading the Bio-Mechs with more weapons, but that they'd be ready in a few months, despite having absolutely zero viable products ready. Still, he got a massive upfront payment to upgrade his Bio-Mechs and essentially just sent his people out into the Bronze Zone with various weapons to chuck into a Bio-Mech in the hopes that they'd absorb it and upgrade themselves.
So wait, he just sent people in with loads of guns and just started throwing them at the Bio-Mechs to see if they're like, like that? And just take stuff and shove it into them?
As any remotely intelligent person would think, they could have tried capturing the Bio-Mechs first and then letting them absorb weapons, but Stannis seemed to have the intelligence level of a bucket of dirt and decided to try the other way around, claiming that if the Bio-Mech can't upgrade itself, then it was a waste of time to try and capture it. Of course, this meant many of his employees going into the Bronze Zone were either coming back with severe injuries or just not coming back at all, being killed by the very Bio-Mechs they were upgrading while also making them even more dangerous. Finally, after a month of no results at this, Stannis went into the zone himself with a minigun and the most powerful laptop his company had on site. As he was headed out, his assistant actually called Bio-Mech Kayla, being well aware of who she was by now, and telling her what moronic thing Stannis was about to do. Kayla was half tempted to just let him get himself killed, but agreed to go and keep an eye on him. She found him in the Bronze Zone just as he had found a crimson Bio-Mech that was clambering up his body to grab the weapon and computer he carried. Kayla was about ready to start trying to take Stannis down before the Bio-Mech could start influencing his weak little brain, but when the Bio-Mech had merged with his body and the tech, he seemed to be acting like his usual self. One of his arms had become a mechanical crab claw, and the other was layered in thick, round metal plating, with the minigun Stannis had brought sticking out of his shoulder. Kayla told him to get the Bio-Mech off him, that it was dangerous, but both he and the mech refused. The Bio-Mech started talking as well. "Hey, back off, lady, I like this guy's moxie and I'm sticking with him, plus he brought me this sick gun to use, and look at this thing, pow 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 pow."
He sounds like some kind of Benny Sharp.
I love it. It's gonna be us against the world, baby. Stannis and Orson. That's me, by the way, Orson. And we're gonna get all the Bio-Mechs here and turn them into soldiers just like Stannis wants, because I don't know, what else do we have to do? This place is really boring. Of course, Kayla couldn't let that happen, but she also had a very hard time trying to get Stannis and Orson away from each other. She tried attacking him, but even when he didn't see an attack coming, it was like he'd slip at just the right time and inadvertently dodge one of Kayla's attacks. Eventually,
was this dude buff from the Gods of Luck or something?
Aided by Orson, he took a full-force swing at Kayla with his claw and sent her flying back across the Bronze Zone. By the time she landed and recovered, he'd started running off back to his work site, where Kayla was only welcome when she was saving Stannis or his employees' lives. Kayla knew this clown of a man was going to keep doing the same thing, bringing Bio-Mechs back to try and put on soldiers, assuming they'd have the same insane luck he had to get a Bio-Mech that was just on board with whatever. So she finally decided to start taking the Bio-Mechs somewhere else. She talked to the rest of the Sharp Gang for options, and eventually decided to just bring them to the Everyverse. This was a universe
Every
that
boss?
overseers would go to create test versions of creatures and beings that they wanted to add to their own universes.
Oh.
It was already full of mindless creatures for the mechs to attach to keep them entertained for those that craved some excitement like Orson had wanted. A few members of the Sharp Gang helped Kayla round up almost all of the Bio-Mechs from the Bronze Zone and transport them to the Everyverse. It has become a bit more of a chaotic place because of this, but few people are around to complain about it nowadays anyway. There are far fewer overseers in the multiverse, thanks to a stony-faced former SCP employee. So now Kayla and Charlie bring all the Bio-Mechs they capture here. But they never were able to get Orson away from Stannis, and Kayla still worries about what this, as she calls him, insufferable idiot, will do with the power of a high-tech Bio-Mech that seems down for whatever moronic plan Stannis cooks up next.
I honestly love it because it's just like, you know what? I don't know a damn thing about this guy, but he brought me cool shit, so that's all I need. He doesn't even care.
Now, as much as Kayla has improved with her partnership with Charlie, there are still times where she comes up against a foe that they can't beat themselves and need to call in help. She came to this realization recently as she found herself in dimension A163, where she thought there were just 3 rogue Bio-Mechs, but she and Charlie arrived to find there seemed to be hundreds of them.
Hundreds?
It was a world that had clearly been ravaged by some kind of global nuclear war, leaving whoever had the power to claim a territory, essentially a king. The area Kayla and Charlie arrived in was referred to by locals as the Regio Sentinel territory. It was in the region surrounding a walled-off, ramshackled kingdom made from the rubble of a small city that hadn't been completely destroyed in the wars. Quickly upon arriving, Kayla and Charlie were attacked by raptors, the very sentinels this area was named after, with red-eyed Bio-Mechs attached to them. 4 of these weren't too much for Kayla and Charlie to handle. With Charlie shifting Kayla's legs into rocket-powered rollerblades, she was fairly easily able to keep away from these creatures and head towards the city. But as she got closer to the walls to scale them, she was hit by a blinding flash that made her and Charlie crash and roll across the ground. Kayla was barely able to pull herself up in time to see a Tyrannosaurus Rex with a Bio-Mech on its head stomping towards her, oil dripping from its mouth. It was reminiscent of her first adventure with Tayrin, but she didn't have time for nostalgia. As they were blading away around the outside walls, Charlie told Kayla, "There's something off about these Bio-Mechs. I'm scanning them and they don't have the same level of consciousness as most Bio-Mechs. I mean, most don't have much, but it seems like these ones are all getting their orders and input from a source inside the walls, and they seem to be coming from the same area as 2 of the Bio-Mech signals we're here to track down." This was all good to know, but not as urgent as escaping from the Rex and Raptors. All the dinos seemed to be speeding up now and were gaining on them. Kayla saw a smooth part of the hacked-together metal wall around the city up ahead and asked Charlie to make her wheels magnetic. They picked up the pace. Kayla leaned as far forward as she could and started gliding up the wall. Just as she was getting near the top, though, the T-Rex blasted her with light again, and Kayla was both blinded and couldn't move. Her momentum kept her moving upwards, though, and she flung over the top of the wall, then falling down towards the torn-up streets on the other side. Luckily, Charlie could still move, and shot a few bursts of propulsion to keep Kayla from crashing too hard. They flopped to the ground, and Kayla banged her shoulder badly, but at least they were alive and out of reach of the dinos. Unfortunately, they were far from out of danger. Just as they started wandering through the city, they were confronted by 2 other people, also with Bio-Mechs attached to them. But it seemed like these people's minds were gone. Their mouths opened wide and siren-like wails came out as they started chasing Kayla and Charlie. More Bio-Mechs soon came to join them, and eventually Kayla and Charlie just had to teleport out of there, back to her home dimension. But they knew they'd have to go back soon. Unfortunately, they could only transport themselves to the nexus point of that world, meaning after they recovered, they had to teleport back outside the walls and get past the dinos all over again. This time, when they got close to the walls, Charlie shifted off one of Kayla's legs and covered her eyes with a set of goggles that protected her from the Rex's paralysis. It was much harder rolling up the side of the walls on one leg, but Kayla pulled it off, and they were in. This time, they tried to be stealthier when inside the walls. They noticed that 2 of the Bio-Mechs they could actually track were both in the exact same location near the center of the city in a tall spire-like tower. The third, though, was off near the city's outskirts. They decided to go and find that one first. They snuck past a few dozen Bio-Mech-infected people that all seemed to be under the same sort of mind control. It creeped Kayla and Charlie out more and more the longer they were there. To Kayla, the people acted like zombies, and to Charlie, the Bio-Mechs attached to them felt the same way. They reached one of the most destroyed-looking buildings they'd seen, with only 3 floors still standing and rubble all around it. The signal of one of the Bio-Mechs seemed to be coming from inside, so they pushed through the debris and climbed in, then down into a basement parking garage. There were some crushed cars and pools of oil, but not much else. After going down 2 more floors, though, they finally found something. It was a blue Bio-Mech resting on the ground with its lights dimmed, next to a decaying corpse. They got closer, and suddenly the mech booted it up and looked at them. It sensed quickly that Charlie was not one of the zombified mechs running around the city, and eagerly explained to them what was going on in this world. The United Nations of North America had essentially launched a global nuclear war, and that had led to the chaotic mess the planet was left in. This city was one of the biggest strongholds, run by a man called Reggie Fayborn, who had taken on not 1, but 2 of the Bio-Mechs that had come to this world, and they dramatically elevated the man's already sadistic behavior. Or still, this world had begun developing some interdimensional travel tech before the wars had started. Fayborn got his hands on this and absorbed it into his Bio-Mechs, so he could leap off to other dimensions. He would always return, though. He'd just leave to find more creatures and beings and helpers and tech to further the fortitude of his empire. Hence the dinosaurs on the outside of the walls.
Yeah,
he even developed a way to create Bio-Mechs, but ones that were linked directly to his mind so he could control anyone they attached to. He could even instantly execute his own soldiers that had Bio-Mechs on them, which he sometimes did on a whim just for the fun of it. The mech they were talking to had been called Screwbolts by its partner, who had been one of the people trying to fight back against Fayborn to free his mind-controlled soldiers, but it was hard to fight him while not trying to kill his mind-controlled minions. Making it harder still, Screwbolt's partner hadn't wanted to kill Fayborn. They had actually managed to take him down once, but he'd escaped the restraints they'd put him in and cut a massive gash in Screwbolt's partner. He tried to get his human away to heal. They ended up down here and, sadly, the brave warrior had bled out. Screwbolts had just powered down then, unsure of what more to do.
So sad.
Kayla and Charlie both told him they were there to help, and would make sure Fayborn was put to justice. Screwbolts was happy to hear that, but said if they got a chance again, they had to kill Fayborn. They couldn't risk letting him get away again, and every second he lived was another second he could be tearing the life out of an innocent person just for fun. Kayla had a hard time arguing with this reasoning, but had never purposely killed anyone herself. She didn't have as harsh a rule about not doing it as other members of the Sharp Gang, like Alexis Jones, but couldn't guarantee she'd be able to keep herself from hesitating to take a life, even from a sociopathic murderer. Luckily, she knew someone that would be more than capable of taking a kill shot. She didn't have any powers, which felt dangerous for coming into a city like this, but Kayla wasn't too concerned for her. She knew that her friend had many times proven to be, essentially, unkillable.
Huh, I wonder who it is he's talking about. That will probably be in the Monday video, so I'll have to watch that personally to see what it is. I'll see who it is.
Hope you enjoyed part 1 of this redraw and get excited for Bio-Mech Killer Kate coming out on Monday. Huge thank you to everyone who submitted, and specifically to the people that were chosen for this episode: BG Studio, Genesis B. Solly, and Thunder Bandit. Now I'll announce May's redraw now because the next episode probably won't have the traditional intro and outro. We'll probably jump right into the story, similar to what I've been doing with my new series Vigilance, which is actually the world in which the next redraw is going to be set. I want people to submit their own original Bio-Knight, which is actually kind of similar to a Bio-Mech. But part of the reason I'm making this the prompt for the redraw is to get more people to watch Vigilance. But if you like Multiverse Tales, I really think you're gonna like Vigilance. I'll link the 2 episodes that have all of the Bio-Knight lore, and Agama's being the one that explains them the best. But some important notes about this redraw: I am going to be turning Vigilance Season 1 into a book when it's finished, and I might include these redraw stories and artwork. If you're chosen and added to the book, I will credit you, but by submitting this Bio-Knight, you are officially giving me all of the rights to this design. So don't submit some beloved creature design of yours that you want to use in some book or something in the future. Also, please only design the Bio-Knight, and give me a brief explanation of what kind of abilities this creature has. I will be designing their human partner with the Bio-Knight bonded to them, because I want to have plenty of creative control over the story and what the person looks like. Very excited to see what you all submit, but besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote from probably my favorite author, Louise Hay, who said, "I don't fix problems, I fix my thinking." and then problems fix themselves.
Oh,
I could get into an explanation, but I'm going to let that one sit. I really like that quote. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.
Well, kids, that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see you kids next time when we flick on. This is Fox, signing out. Peace.